Hello, podcast listeners. I'm Ashley with the Civilian Marksmanship Program, back again with a very important and exciting podcast. Before I get to the topic at hand, a few announcements and a quick congratulations. We recently held the JROTC National 3-Position Air Rifle Championship for high school cadets at the Gary Anderson CMP Competition Center at Camp Perry in Ohio, and were able to witness many young athletes display their talents. It was a culminating event that began with a postal competition in September, followed by regional events in February, before concluding with nationals in March. The national championship includes 2 qualifying rounds and an exciting elimination final, all put together to produce the overall winning teams and individuals. The awards banquet that always follows the competition was so fun this year, with more of a prom-like atmosphere almost, instead of the traditional style. There were flashing lights, a photo studio, music, sparkler sprays by the stage. It really felt like a celebration of the hard work the athletes put in to reach the national level. So thank you to our staff members for putting on that incredible display, and thank you to the many, over 500, guests who attended. We hope you enjoyed yourselves, and congratulations to the winning teams and individuals. For those who weren't able to be at the JROTC Nationals or the awards banquet, we have photos available for free viewing and download on our CMP Zenfolio page, an online collection of photos for all the events we put on, and that can be found at cmp1.zenfolio.com. That's CMP, the number 1.zenfolio.com. In other news, registration for the national matches is open. We're only a few short months away, so if you haven't already started planning your trip to Camp Perry this July, get on it. We have a lot of fun competitions and educational experiences in the lineup for the national matches this year, designed for those who are well-versed in the sport as well as those who have never tried it before. After all, that's why we're here, to provide marksmanship opportunities for skilled individuals while also presenting a safe, encouraging environment for others to properly understand and discover the sport. Outside of national matches, don't forget about our last podcast episode's topic, the 2023 Yankee Cup, set to take place May 23rd to the 26th at the Green Valley Rifle and Pistol Club in Hallsville, Missouri. Registration is open for that event as well, with guests of all experience levels encouraged to attend. We'd like to again thank our title sponsor, Midway USA, for helping us present this fantastic match to our supporters. We've also recently, since we recorded the podcast, received an additional $50,000 in giveaways to be used at the CMP Yankee Cup, including industry-leading firearms, equipment, and cash prizes to those in attendance. And that's all in addition to the $25,000 already given by the Midway USA. Just absolutely incredible. For those who register for the CMP Yankee Cup before May 1st, we're raffling off a 1911 pistol and 20 500-round bricks of 22 pistol standard velocity surplus ammo, meaning 21 winners overall. So, don't hold off. Get those registrations in for your chance to win some pretty great prizes. And for rifle and pistol competitors alike, be sure to check out our upcoming Eastern CMP games and high power matches on the schedule for April 28th to May 7th in North Carolina. The annual event features CMP's own recreational outdoor rifle and pistol matches, along with a Pistol Marksmanship 101 course for those wanting to learn more about the discipline firsthand. Eastern Games also offers a series of high-power matches, as well as maintenance, rifle basics, and new shooter clinics, again for all experience levels. Of course, find information on all these events and more on our website at www.thecmp.org. Today, we'll hear from CMP's new chairman and CEO, Gerald O'Keefe, or Jerry, as he prefers in a conversational setting. We'll learn not only about his fascinating career and what led him to the CMP, but also about what he plans to do with the current state of the company and his strategies for leading the organization into the future. A retired Army officer serving over 40 years collectively through active duty and civilian positions, Jerry comes from military roots. His mother, a Navy nurse, and his father, a Marine, met in an almost cinematic way during World War II. Jerry himself graduated from West Point and served 27 active duty years in the Army, living all over the world. He retired from active duty in 2008 and was selected as a member of the Army's Senior Executive Service, also known as SES. He went on to eventually be selected as the Administrative Assistant to the Secretary of the Army, a 3-star equivalent civilian position and the senior career civilian position in the entire Department of the Army, which holds over 200,000 career civilians. Incredibly, his office was literally directly across from where the Secretary of the Army sat. Just amazing. Jerry worked for over a decade within the Pentagon, operating, as he describes, as the mayor. That is, overseeing multi-billion-dollar budget lines, signing thousands of documents, monitoring IT across the entire Pentagon, concessions, parking, and the responsibility of the over 20,000 employees who worked there and over 1,500 who worked directly with him. He also played a lead role in building the National Museum of the United States Army in Virginia, which opened in late 2020. Jerry began with the CMP in 2012 while working as the administrative assistant to the Secretary of the Army, helping the transition of rifles from the Army to the CMP through the M1 program. He retired from the Pentagon in 2018 and soon decided to join the CMP's mission by becoming a member of the board of directors. When Judy Legursky retired as CMP's board chairman and CEO in 2022, Jerry took over. Now, only a few months into his tenure, Jerry has already implemented some modernization to the organization, like updating the CMP's vision and mission statements. He's hands-on within the company, working to add enhancements like a new indoor facility already in development in Missouri, and possibly even another permanent facility out west. He's working with staff members to expand programs like action pistol and small bore rifle, as well as to implement more technology that will lead CMP into the future. In this podcast discussion we had with him, Jerry also goes into one of the hottest topics discussed about our organization, the future of the CMP's sales program, how the M1 rifle climate currently looks, and how the CMP plans to keep the sales program and, essentially, the CMP running. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get to it. Here's Gerald O'Keefe, CMP Board Chair and CEO. All right, I am here with CMP's new board chairman and CEO, Gerald O'Keefe. Are you okay if I call you Jerry?
Absolutely.
All right, great. So if you don't mind, Jerry, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up and where you live now and all those kinds of things?
Well, thank you very much. Before I get into that, first, I think it's important to start out that I'm just very honored and privileged to have this job as the chairman of the board and CEO of the Civilian Marksmanship Program. Working with the great professionals that make up the CMP staff and interacting with our many, many customers and competitors, it's truly been a joy these first 6 months of the job. And of course, CMP's mission is one that I'm passionate about, and I know we'll talk about that more later. In terms of a little background about myself, right now I live in Leesburg, Virginia. Leesburg is about 30 minutes west of Washington, D.C. I'm married. I'm a retired Army officer, and so is my wife. We have two grown children that both live in the area. One lives in Washington, D.C., and the other in Maryland, and so far one grandson. But despite the fact that I've lived here in Northern Virginia for over 20 years, I'm originally from Medford, Massachusetts, which is a suburb outside of Boston. So I'm a big Boston sports fan, Patriots and Red Sox in particular. And I also came from a military family. My father served in the Marine Corps. My mother was a Navy nurse during World War II. And my older brother also went to West Point and basically set that path for me. In terms of things I like to do, I am a big sports enthusiast. Love to run, although that's getting slower and less frequent these days. I do like to golf, and I recently got a new pickleball set, so I think I'm at the age to start that new sport.
Wow.
And of course, all things shooting in CMP as well.
Mm-hmm. All right. So it sounds like you have a family history of military involvement. Where did I assume that's sort of where your interest came from? But can you explain a little bit how your own military career came along?
Well, thank you. Yes, it certainly did come from my family. As I said, my dad was a career Marine, just an amazing life story. He actually enlisted in the Marine Corps before World War II started and was involved in a lot of the battles in the South Pacific. And he stayed in after World War II and also served in combat in Korea. So, pretty amazing life story. And he met my mom, through that process in World War II. He had been wounded and was eventually evacuated to the Chelsea Naval Hospital outside of Boston, where mom was a Navy nurse, and that's how they met. So it's a pretty amazing love story. As I mentioned, my older brother did go to West Point as well. So growing up outside of Boston, West Point was only about a 4-hour drive away. So as a high school student, I certainly saw the military academy in detail, saw his experience, and all those things were a big part that led me into the military. Although I will say, in the mid '70s at the time, the military didn't have the reputation that it has today, so it wasn't as easy a decision as it might seem now. Many years later. I graduated from West Point in 1981. I was commissioned as an engineer officer. I had multiple assignments as a combat engineer officer. I did serve 27 years on active duty in the Army, lived all over the United States and Europe, and as a more senior officer, had multiple assignments in the Pentagon. After retiring from active duty in 2008, I was selected as a member of the Army's Senior Executive Service, SES. And after a couple of initial SES jobs, I was selected to be the administrative assistant to the Secretary of the Army. And this is a 3-star equivalent civilian position, and it's the senior career civilian position in the entire Department of the Army. And to give you some perspective, the Department of the Army has over 200,000 career civilians. So a very big job, and I think we'll talk about that more later. And so when you put all that together, counting West Point and my time as a Department of the Army civilian, I actually served just over 41 years in the Army.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it was amazing service, in and out of uniform, and certainly one that I look back on very fondly and relish.
Yeah, that's certainly a very, very notable military career, and thank you for your service. In the past, you've described your position as assistant to the Secretary of the Army as historical. Could you explain more about why it's such a prominent role?
Absolutely. The job that's titled the Administrative Assistant to the Secretary of the Army is historic. It traces its lineage back to the initial formation of the Department of War at the beginning of our country and the establishment of our Constitution. The Congress initially established the cabinet position of the Secretary of War, which is now, of course, the Secretary of Defense. And with that, they also established as the second position in law the position of a chief clerk, and that title in the law was later changed to administrative assistant. And despite that duty title, the position of chief clerk and now administrative assistant to the Secretary of the Army brings with it a huge portfolio and significant responsibility. As I mentioned, it is a 3-star equivalent position. And as the administrative assistant, I oversaw 70 different functions for the Army headquarters and the Army itself.
So if you can talk about it, what sort of interesting experiences did you have while working at the Pentagon?
Well, thank you. So a lot of them. I have about 13 years of experience in the Pentagon as a senior executive and as a colonel, so I have a lot of things to choose from to answer this question. A couple of the highlights include, as a colonel, being in a leading role in transitioning all of the Army force structure after 9/11 to fight the global war on terrorism. It was a huge task given the size of the Army enterprise and its force structure, active component Army National Guard and Army Reserve. Another one, as a senior executive and as the administrative assistant, working closely with a number of different secretaries of the Army and assisting them in furthering the Army's mission. My office as the administrative assistant was directly across the hall from the Secretary of the Army, so there were lots of opportunity for the two of us to interact. As the administrative assistant and the senior career civilian in the Department of the Army, I was responsible for managing the transition of political appointees during presidential administration changes. And so I did that a couple of times to include the beginning of the Trump administration. I managed the headquarters budget for the Department of the Army and many of the other budget lines that kind of aggregated at the headquarters level. They were multi-billion-dollar budgets every year. And one year it was actually as much as $13 billion. Another interesting part of the role that I had as the administrative assistant was largely functioning as the mayor of the Pentagon, the joint base that is the Pentagon, to include overseeing enterprise information technology for all of DoD and the Pentagon, real estate management, Pentagon concessions, parking, motor pool operations, and many others. It was really a fascinating, different part of the role.
Yeah.
I was also responsible for overseeing the entire Army Museum enterprise, and I played a lead role in building the National Museum of the United States Army, which is now up and running on Fort Belvoir, Virginia. As the administrative assistant, I was also the Army's archivist and senior official for records management and privacy. During my time in that position, I signed over 20,000 documents. These included every type of document to include award certificates, general memoranda, and also signing or authenticating all Army regulations, which are the Army level policy documents. So kind of in summary, as the admin assistant with over 70 functions and over 1,500 people that worked for me, every day was different with unique challenges, and it was a very challenging and rewarding experience. And I guess in summary, kind of the big highlight, though, is working with so many great Army professionals, both in uniform and Department of the Army civilians, to further the Army's mission in support of our country.
Wow, it's really interesting to think about. Obviously, the Pentagon, an extremely important part of our government. To think about the inner workings of the Pentagon itself, like you said, being the mayor of the Pentagon, essentially, having to still deal with those administrative issues just to keep it flowing. That is really an interesting perspective.
Yeah, it is a fascinating place. There are well over 20,000 people that go to work in the Pentagon every day, and it takes an awful lot to keep that running, both operationally and administratively. So it really was an honor to be part of that for so many years.
Excellent. So go ahead and if you wouldn't mind, talk about your relationship with the CMP. How did that begin?
Well, it began with my tenure as the administrative assistant to the Secretary of the Army. I mentioned that there were about 70 functions or missions associated with that role, and being the Army Secretary's liaison to the CMP was one of those 7. So my relationship with the CMP started in about 2012. And I did a fair amount of work authoring memorandums of agreement between the Army and the CMP that covered the mechanics and management controls associated with the transfer of surplus firearms and ammunition. I also did considerable work in assisting with the repatriation of M1 Garands from the governments of Turkey and the Philippines to the Army and eventually to the CMP. So through that role in the government, I learned a lot about the CMP, its board, its mission, and culture.
And then you came onto the board in 2019. Why did you feel joining the CMP would be something you would enjoy?
I retired from the job in the Pentagon in 2018, and I joined the CMP board a year or so later. And it really was just a great opportunity to stay involved in the CMP mission. From my previous exposure to the CMP, it was clear how much good the CMP does for shooting sports and for youth and junior competitors. So joining the board was a great opportunity. And it really also had the extra benefit of keeping me connected with the Army.
And with that previous career experience, how did that prepare you for your current role as chairman and CEO?
Well, we haven't talked about my role as the chairman of the board yet, but I do fulfill both functions for the CMP, both the chairman of the board and the CEO of the company. And first, we have a great board. We have extraordinary individuals and professionals who are selfless in their support of the CMP mission and assist me greatly in guiding the company from a strategic perspective. In terms of career experience that might help me with the CMP, I guess you just have to say I have a lot of experience. And that's one of the great things about being in an organization with a massive scope and scale in the Army, is you really get to do so many things. You command organizations, you work in a variety of staff positions, you live all over the world, you work with and for many different people. And therefore, over time, the amount of experience, leadership positions at many levels, functional jobs, all aggregate to providing quite a toolkit for future opportunities. The other thing I think that's worth mentioning is the amazing commitment to education and professional development the military services provide. And I'm certainly a beneficiary of all that and hope to put all that to good work at the CMP.
Something that you've already implemented since your start in September of 2022 is a revision of CMP's vision and mission statements. Why did you feel that was important, and what has changed from the previous statements?
Well, first, it's, when you have new leaders, it's pretty standard to conduct a mission and vision review. So again, from that aspect, that was pretty kind of normal business. But the other reason I thought this was really important is the CMP has just grown so dramatically over the past couple of decades that I felt a kind of a review and taking a fresh look at this was really important. In terms of what's changed, the mission statement now states that our mission is to promote marksmanship through firearms safety, training, competitions, and youth programs. Not a huge change in the mission statement. Now, we did add competitions to it. That wasn't in the previous mission statement. Obviously, competitions is pretty central to what we do in the CMP. It's also articulated in our enabling legislation. So we thought that was a bit of an omission in our mission statement and that we ought to add it in. But again, the mission statement has stayed pretty consistent with what it was previously. In terms of the vision, vision statements are aspirational. They think about where you're going to be in the future, and we did change the vision statement pretty significantly. The new vision statement is for the CMP to lead the nation in marksmanship excellence, providing safe, high quality, and innovative programs with a focus of youth. And every word in that statement matters, just like it does in the mission statement. And so what you see now in this vision statement is an aspirational goal to lead the nation in marksmanship excellence, for the CMP to really have more of a national footprint with its programs. And of course, to continue to provide excellence in what we do. Safety is fundamental to all we do. And innovation was something that we very purposely added there. I mean, over the years, CMP has been a leader in innovation with electronic targets, and we feel like that's an area we continue to need to push. And both in our mission statement and our vision statement, we stay connected to our deliberate and intentional focus on youth and supporting youth programs. So I think it was a very worthwhile exercise to review these. And I think our vision statement's important because it gives us a guide for where we want to be in the future.
You touched on this a little bit, but given these new vision and mission statements, what are some areas of the organization that our supporters can expect to remain the same? And what are some advances you hope to implement during your tenure?
Well, we are instituting a lot of change, but I think a lot of it won't be all that obvious to our customers. For example, we'll still be executing our competitions and running the Talladega Marksmanship Park to a high standard. And of course, with all the safety and responsible firearms ownership continuing to underpin all our programs of training. We'll still also be working the sales side of our business hard, getting safe and quality products to our customers. And as I mentioned earlier, we will still continue to focus on our youth mission, teaching not only marksmanship, but safety. In terms of changes, again, the vision is aspirational as it should be. We do want to continue to grow into a truly national organization. One part of that is to expand our physical footprint to the west. We're starting that with a competition and training center in Columbia, Missouri. Now, I know that's not truly west, but it's a step in that direction. Mm-hmm. We acquired that facility, and later in the spring or summer, we'll begin transforming it into a world-class indoor air gun and small bore range. Also, in partnership with the Green Valley Rifle and Pistol Club, we've taken over the pistol championship that's branded as the Bianchi Cup. It'll now be called the CMP Bianchi Cup. That occurs in late May and is also in Missouri near Columbia. And in general, we're excited about doing more with action pistol. And this year, we're adding 5 new action pistol bays at the Talladega Marksmanship Park. Another initiative is we've recently acquired 100 small bore electronic targets, and we really want to expand our small bore program. In a related way, we're taking very specific steps to increase participant numbers at all of our matches. We've seen some decline, which actually we started to see pre-COVID, and then of course the COVID year or so was very difficult, and we are working very hard to try to increase those numbers. Another interesting one that I'm personally going to take on is that one of the aspects of truly being a national organization is our relationship with other shooting organizations. And so one of my personal goals is to establish and maybe formalize that network with the NRA, USA Shooting, industry partners, et cetera. I think that's very important for the sport and industry as a whole. I mentioned earlier that the vision statement includes the word innovative. We want to continue to push technology in shooting sports. And we've done that with electronic targets, and we'll continue to do so. My personal view is that if we're going to get youth into the sport and keep them, I believe that introducing more technology is both critical and necessary. And for example, we need to look at all the technology that's out there. There's some fantastic technology with shooting simulators right now, and we're looking into those. We're also looking into a potential CMP role in electronic sports, esports, essentially video games. And we're not sure where that's going to go yet, but since so many youth participate in games that are shooting centric, in video games that are shooting centric, we think that we at least need to explore that and see what role CMP might have. All this said, we do need to proceed with our growth plans deliberately. Growth at the scale that we're envisioning is dependent upon having sufficient resources to sustain that growth. So, for example, and for other examples, we have thoughts about an additional new marksmanship park out west. We are looking at how we can assist our affiliated clubs better with more resources, how we can use our state directors better. We want to increase our scholarship program. I mentioned shooting simulators already, and a host of other things, but they are probably a year or two away, and again, somewhat dependent on resources.
And a big part of the resources you're talking about comes from our sales department. It's certainly a significant part of what we do here at the CMP. And a lot of people are wondering about its current state as well as its future. Can you speak a little to that?
Absolutely, yeah. The sales part of it is our lifeblood. It funds basically everything we do, and the CMP is an expensive organization to operate. Therefore, we're continuing to work the sales portion of this hard and working to establish a reliable pipeline of sales products so that we can plan all those other things that we talked about. And over the years, the Department of the Army has been a great partner to us, providing surplus firearms based on what's authorized in our legislation. So right now, we're continuing to sell M1 Garands, M1911 pistols, and various other products. The pipeline of M1911 pistols still has many years to run, given a legislatively mandated limit allowing the transfer of up to 10,000 years. So that piece of the sales pipeline is in good shape in terms of its longevity. The M1s are at a different point in their sales life cycle. Short of getting more military assistance provided M1s back from foreign countries, the M1 Garand pipeline will run out in a few years, at least based upon the quantities that we sell now. So we're looking to other options to backfill that important sales pipeline and revenue source. We're cautiously optimistic about all this, but don't have anything we want to share right now. On the good news front, and as many as you probably saw on our website, we did just receive over 10 million rounds of surplus 22 and 30 caliber ammunition. We are looking at options for how we best distribute those sales now to our affiliated clubs, at our stores, at our competitions, and online. So more to follow on that soon of the sale of that ammunition.
It's exciting. Exciting things coming. And to finish up here, something that the CMP hasn't really touched on much in the past, the topics of firearms in general. It can sometimes be a tricky one, seemingly presenting certain undertones or maybe even causing divide among us at times. Undoubtedly, safety in all aspects of marksmanship is a recurring theme in CMP's philosophies and certainly should be emphasized in the national firearm conversation. How can the CMP expand its outreach to all U.S. citizens, regardless of beliefs or backgrounds, in the hopes of increasing awareness of the positive attributes of the sport? In other words, what do you see as CMP's role in bettering the marksmanship community through its practices?
Well, first, I think we all need to agree that what's occurring with the mass shootings in our country is horrific and unacceptable. And it's also clearly a very complex problem. From a CMP perspective, which I think is really all I can comment, and as you alluded to in your question, everything we do in the CMP is centered around safety and responsible firearms ownership That's on the range and at home, with how we operate and what we sell. Safety is a fundamental and core part of the CMP's DNA, and it bears repeating that it underpins all we do. And I think it's also important to note that much of what the CMP does supports the sport of shooting. This is a sport that's in the Olympics, and many colleges and high schools also have teams. The CMP interacts with and supports junior competitors to a large degree, and it's fascinating to talk to these young competitors. When you do, it's clear that they're learning things like discipline, focus, teamwork, patience, the importance of preparation, the art of training to improve at a task. There really is so much goodness in this, many great life skills. And of course, they're learning safety and how to properly care, maintain, and secure a firearm, something they'll carry with them for the rest of their lives. It's also important to note that the CMP is a federally chartered nonprofit, and therefore we do not lobby. We execute our mission with a deliberate and intentional focus on safety and do everything we can to be a responsible and, if you will, good citizen for our country and our competitors. As we discussed, expanding CMP's reach as a national organization is part of our new vision. I highlighted some of the things we're thinking about earlier in the podcast, and I'm confident that the more people we can touch with our programs, the more we can do to actually assist in this area, ensuring that our customers, competitors, and fellow U.S. citizens practice safe and responsible firearms ownership. So in summary, I'd assert with a lot of confidence that the CMP is actually a force for good in this debate and with this issue, and we intend to keep it that way.
All right. Well, Jerry, thank you so much for taking the time to give us a little insight into who you are and what you plan on doing with your time with the CMP. Thank you again for all of your service up to this point. We are very grateful for you spending your time helping to support marksmanship and the sport, and we're very excited to see what you have planned for us for the future.
Well, thank you. It really is an exciting time to be part of the CMP. And I'd like to conclude here kind of the way I started, that I'm really honored to be in this position. And frankly, my first 6 months in this role have been just fantastic. I'd like to thank the CMP staff for assisting with my transition and professionally dealing with what's been a fair amount of change. I'd also like to thank all our customers and competitors. The CMP is fundamentally in the customer service business, and we thank you for all your support. And I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible at our events in the upcoming months and years. And finally, we'll also continue to communicate with you. And we'll do that via a number of different media, via our website. And yes, we do need to update our website, via social media, via our state directors, affiliated clubs, and other venues as well. So thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Jerry. Gosh, Jerry's background is just so impressive and remarkable. Wow. Basically maintaining the entire Pentagon and holding the highest senior civilian position in the Department of the Army? So interesting to me. Anyway, we're happy to have Jerry with us at the CMP. He certainly has the qualifications and undoubtedly the drive to lead us to new places. And we can't wait to see all the new ideas he'll implement in the coming months and years. I hope this podcast was able to answer any and all questions you may have had about CMP's transition to a new CEO and our future plans as an organization. But if there was anything we missed, don't ever hesitate to reach out to us. As I said at the beginning of the podcast, National Matches registration is open, as well as registration for the 2023 Bianchi Cup, with those many prizes and giveaways, along with registration for the 2023 Eastern CMP Games. So be sure to visit our website at www.thecmp.org to learn more about those events and sign up today. Like the beautiful spring weather outside? The competition season is heating up, and we can't wait to see you all out on the range. Until next time, stay safe out there.